Thank you for having me today and being a representative for the Columbus Fire for the civil service. Thank you very much for being a part of this process and helping us out with the division and make us the better division as we go through here. So, as they mentioned, one key thing to think about today is as we're going through here is the full audience is not here. We're taping this one today, so in weeks to come, this will be shown to other analysts and test developers. So they're not here to ask the questions. You are here, so I encourage you, please ask questions. If you're unclear about something, you want me to clarify it, or there's a topic I did not bring up, please ask the question and we can expand upon that and help those individuals that'll be viewing this in a couple of weeks from now. So, as I said, I'm currently assigned to the training bureau, battalion chief. Been there for just over 1 year now with 22 years of service to the Columbus Division of Fire. We'll get started here. Let me preface this little video that we're going to do. So in 2019, last year, Fire Chief Kevin O'Connor, who's now retired, he presented this video to the Metro Fire Chiefs Conference, and it was to encourage them to come to Columbus in 2022. And he was successful in that, so the Metro Fire Chiefs Conference will be in Columbus in 2022. But this is a nice video, talks a little bit about the fire department and the city of Columbus. Obviously, we have some residents here and workers, but for some people from out of town, and we've been here before, but just kind of gives you some new perspective of Columbus maybe you haven't seen before or heard of.
2022 is a special year for Columbus Fire as we'll be celebrating the Fire Division's 200th anniversary. Over 800,000 Columbus residents and 1,600 division members are ready to roll out the red carpet and welcome you to our hometown. There's an energy and excitement in Columbus that's going to hit you as soon as you arrive. The New York Times has named Columbus as one of 50 top places to visit in the world. Big things are happening here and you're invited to join in. The city is booming and not just in population. The downtown district features exciting entertainment, arts, and dining districts anchored by the Scioto Mile, which recently completed a massive revitalization, adding 33 acres of riverfront green spaces for festivals, water sports, and outdoor art. Our brand new National Veterans Memorial Museum is now open along downtown Scioto Mile. COSI, the nation's top science center, just got even better with the brand new permanent American Museum of Natural History. With a revitalized riverfront and booming downtown, Columbus is one of the nation's fastest growing cities. The capital city's incredible culinary scene features top-ranked chefs, a rich farm-to-table movement, one-of-a-kind restaurants, and creative artisan desserts, beers, wines, and spirits. Nationally acclaimed distilleries work together with brewers, coffee roasters, and high-end cocktail bars, black box stages, music halls, and dive bars to deliver unforgettable nightlife. Neighborhoods on all sides of downtown are bursting with new places to eat and shop, and artists are shaping new areas of the city into dynamic spaces to explore. It's time to get to know the Columbus that grew up when you weren't looking. For the golfers out there, just 15 minutes north of our downtown is the home of Jack Nicklaus's famed Memorial Tournament.
Hello, Fire Chiefs. I'm Jack Nicklaus. Although you know me as a professional golfer, I'm first and foremost a native of Central Ohio. Beyond great golf, there is much for you to experience during your stay, such as fine dining, local breweries and distilleries, as well as arts and plenty of nightlife options. The Columbus Division of Fire became a professional organization in 1822. As the easy math suggests, they will be celebrating a significant birthday and milestone in 2022. The Metro Chiefs' attendance for this conference will be an integral part of the city celebrating Columbus Fire's bicentennial and 200th birthday.
Greetings from Columbus. I'm Mayor Andy Ginther, and I would like to welcome you to our great city. One of my top priorities is making our city safe for our residents and our visitors. We make sure our Division of Fire has the best people, tools, equipment, training, and the most important, the very best leadership we can provide. So I appreciate this conference for giving everyone an opportunity to learn from one another and become even better leaders. The conference in Columbus is not all business. Come and enjoy some of our great shopping districts, fine dining, concerts, professional sports, golf courses, craft breweries, and award-winning distilleries. I look forward to having you here with us in 2022.
Hi everyone, this is Jungle Jack Hanna, Director Emeritus of the Columbus Zoo. Over my last 40 years at the zoo, I've been lucky enough to travel the world, but golly day, there's something extra special about Columbus, Ohio. We have great shopping, pro sports, festivals and casinos, fine arts and fashion, the waterfront downtown, and of course, one of the top zoos in America. 2022 is a special year since it's the 200th anniversary of the Columbus Division of Fire. This fire division takes pride in being a national leader in fire and emergency medical services. Being a leader is a trait they have in common with the zoo. Chief O'Connor promises you an educational and entertaining conference. There is something here for everyone. We can't wait to show you what's great about Columbus in 2022.
Greetings, I'm Ned Pettis Jr., Safety Director of the City of Columbus, Ohio, overseeing the divisions of fire and police. Before I held this position, I retired from the Columbus Division of Fire after serving over 35 years, the last 10 as Fire Chief. I'm currently a senior member of the Metro Chiefs, and I'm a past president of this great organization. I'd love for you to see and experience some of what we have to offer. We have spectacular golf courses, spas, shopping, and restaurants. We have 2 casinos if you care to try your luck at the slots or table games, or maybe betting on some harness racing is more your style. If you're more interested in participating than watching, we have indoor electric kart racing that will get your heart racing. Or maybe try out Top Golf, a new way to enjoy golf. Whatever interests you, we have it here. I'd like to give a ringing endorsement to Chief O'Connor's invitation to come to Columbus in 2022. See you then.
"2022 will be a special year for our division as we need you to help us celebrate our 200th anniversary. We look forward to sharing this milestone in our division's history. Columbus is your only choice in 2022. We'll see you there.
Columbus 2022!
So you can see why that video, amongst other things, is one of the reasons why we got the conference next year. And that was basically all done in-house by our videographer as well. So commend him on his hard work as he edited that whole process. So let's get down to why we're here today, obviously, with the promotions and the Columbus Fire Department. So this is the rank structure of the division, going up from firefighter, and we'll talk about how you reach each one of those points in promotion. The firefighter, in order to be eligible to test for that lieutenant test, you have to have 5 years in the division. And then from there, lieutenant, captain, battalion chief, deputy chief, it has to be 1 year in grade of your current role to be eligible to take that next promotional test. The assistant chief and fire chief are appointed positions, so there is no civil service testing process for that. So lieutenant and up to and including deputy chief are all part of the civil service process, as you guys will be learning throughout this week. This is the makeup of the executive staff within the division, the 5 bureaus that we have: administration, training bureau, support services, emergency services, and prevention bureau, each led by the fire chief and then subsequently by the assistant chiefs of each bureau from there. We'll get into a little bit of the training bureau and emergency services, as those pertain a little bit more to the test development and the civil service process. This is just a quick organizational chart of the training bureau. It is probably one of the largest bureaus when you look at it without actually looking at the actual people assigned to it. You know, emergency services is going to be their biggest one, but the number of sections in there and what we do, because we do all in-house training within a division of fire, I would say 95% of it is in-house within a division of fire as we go through here. We'll break down these sections as we go through here. So we start off recruit training as you go through the civil service process and you are hired onto Division of Fire. You will go through recruit training, which is approximately 34 weeks in recruit training, that is to get your firefighter 2 state of Ohio certification and at minimum your EMT basic certification, because you do not need any credentials or certifications to enter into the Division of Fire through civil service. Even if you have credentials, you come through there, we still train you all this to the same level or the same certifications and same classes that anyone coming through with non-certifications. Like myself, I came on with no experience and I went through the whole process. Someone else came on from the department that had 17 years of experience, but they still went through the same classes, same tests, everything that we do, going through there. Next one is the apprenticeship program. The apprenticeship program is 36 months, 3 years in full, but that also includes recruit training. So once you get out of recruit training, you have approximately 27 months of apprenticeship training from there. That's basically a lot of hands-on training. And then we do 6 modules in there that have particular disciplines from engine operations, truck operations, officer duties. And you have that, those modules are about 17 to 20 weeks long. And in the end, it turns out to be 36 months. And then you'll be certified journeyman through the state of Ohio. Our paramedic program is done in-house. That is volunteer at this point. Sometimes we have force people, but lately we have enough people to volunteer for it. And we do it about 1 to every 2 years. We run a class of 15 to 20 paramedic students to go through there. Right now it's about 12 to 14 month program. The Fire Officer 1, once you are promoted, so anyone in the civil service that is eligible to be promoted on the list, and we foresee that they will be or that have been promoted, they will have to go through the Fire Officer 1 program, which is 3 weeks long. The state of Ohio I should say a credential through the state of Ohio as we go through there. We have Rescue Techs, which is a 6 weeks program. A lot of hands-on training, classroom training we go through there. Hazmat, just 3 weeks. And then EMS continuing education. For the state of Ohio, this is a 3-year cycle for us. And to accomplish this, we send every single division member down to our training center, and they get all their certification hours through our own classroom setting. So they don't have to go on their time off. There's no, I'd say there's no, but there's limited video-based training. A lot of it is hands-on training as we go through there. This is the makeup of the emergency services organizational chart. This is the full organizational chart, not what your daily staffing will look like. We'll get into that in the next slide or two. But this is just the full one as we go through there. So the deputy chief oversees all the 7 battalions. We have 9 battalion chiefs because of people with Kelly days or vacation. You have extra relief officers as you go through there. So versus the 7 battalions that we have 9 battalion chiefs to staff all of those. And it goes on all the way down to the firefighter level, operating on a 3-unit platoon and 24 hours on and 48 hours off. So the Division of Fire is made up by 34 stations. We just recently added Station 35 earlier this year. We have Station 1 downtown that is considered Station 1, Station 9, but we kind of say it as one station is there. That's why there's 35 stations, 35 engines, but there's only 34 stations within a division. From there, we have the deputy chief, who is ES2. He oversees each unit day, 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit that they're assigned to. And then they have the 7 battalions, 36 engines, so on and so forth. The 8 EMS officers, each battalion has 1 EMS officer. Those EMS officers are lieutenants, except for there is 1 captain, EMS 10, and he oversees all of the EMS lieutenant officers assigned to each battalion. And then we have the specialized units, and we'll get a little bit more to the specialized units further down. So the personnel, that is just overall for the division, we have a strength of 1,575 personnel, with what you're looking at, 204 lieutenants and captains, battalion chiefs go through there. Obviously, the testing process is limited, and it's very competitive and important to everyone as they go through that process. As you can see, there's limited opportunities to be promoted. This is our run volume for 2019. Go through, we averaged 435 calls for the division in 2019. Obviously, our summer times, those are our calls increases throughout that time period, as most cities will see that. Obviously, this is going to be a unique scenario going to 2020, completing the year. When we look at the run volumes, they're probably going to be lower, which is probably one of the first times, to my recollection, we'll ever see a lower call volume due to the pandemic that we're in right now, because the call volumes decreased as we were isolating ourselves within the state of Ohio and city of Columbus. Although our call volumes have increased, and they're probably back to normal, nearly normal in the summer months right now. So overall, structural fires, you see the vehicle fires that were included in there as well. Vehicle fires may include approximately, 1 to 2 vehicle fires a day. So you kind of look at that and see what the structural fires look like going in there, averaging a few a day, whether it's a kitchen fire, a small garage fire, or a full structural fire. And 80% of this, though, is the EMS, the auto accidents. That is the majority of the calls that we run on. This is just a quick look at the call volume for the number of medics in the city. Each one of you go through there. So Medic 14 had the highest call volume last year, 4,796 runs. We go through there. Some you'll see at the bottom there is, you kind of see it. There's 800 series medics. That means that they are stationed at, 2 medics are at that station. So 806 has the station at Station 6 and has 2 medics in there. So you can look at the call volume that some of them, as in 815 and then Medic 15 had nearly 9,000 runs within that station just on medic runs alone at those firehouses. Next is just engine totals. Get in there, engine 6 was the highest for the division, 4,505. And then you can see ladder rescue, just a quick reference point to see where their number runs are. They're running predominantly on the fire runs, your fire alarms, your vehicle accidents. So their call volumes are down because they're not running predominantly on EMS runs as we go through here. And then the battalion chiefs and EMS officers. Some quick unique facts about the Division of Fire. The city of Bexley, they contract out their fire service, so they have their own police department, and we give them their fire and EMS. Just a unique thing we go through there. That's the home of the Governor DeWine, state of Ohio. His residence is within the city of Bexley. Basically, it's a city just outside, down the street from here, that is surrounded by the city of Columbus. So we've been supplying or giving them their fire and EMS for decades. The Ohio State University, obviously one of the largest campuses in the nation. Unique thing is when we have home games at this OSU stadium, it becomes the 6th largest city in the state of Ohio. So when we go through there and we do the fire and EMS at that stadium, we basically assign a battalion of special duty personnel to be able to manage that. We have our own fire alarm office in there, Mobile One, our incident commander, we have rescue units and medics that will respond to patients in the side of the stadium just outside of there and do transports as well. So it's quite a large operation when we do have any home games at the Horseshoe. With probably 100,000 plus in the stadium and maybe another 40,000 easily outside the stadium, depending on which team they're playing. The other thing, we respond within the Ohio State University. They don't have their own fire department. The only thing we don't do there is their building inspections. We do their fire and EMS. They have their own police department, but we respond to all incidents of fire and EMS at the university. The bomb squad is one of the largest, if not the largest, fire based in the nation. Typically, you're going to see bomb squads that are associated with police departments, the sheriff's county department, but Columbus for decades has been the one, has been associated with the fire department and not the police department, which is a very unique thing. And then the mobile stroke unit, there's, I think it's less than 24 within the nation, and we implemented this last year, and we have a mobile stroke unit that runs throughout the city, and they run about a 13-hour shift every single day going through there. So very unique thing, and it's been an excellent benefit for the citizens of Columbus. So breaking it down, what are our officer daily responsibilities going in through here? You can see a list of things. Obviously, they have their emergency runs. We know this. But this is just kind of more personnel stuff administratively that you'd be doing at the firehouse. The key thing there underlined in the captain in bold and underlined is the fire station, all units. And what that means is each station has amongst the 3 units has an officer assigned to it. There'll be 2 lieutenants and 1 captain. That captain assigned to that fire station is responsible for everything that goes on at that fire station, essentially whether they're on duty or off duty. So their responsibility is to supervise the lieutenants on the 1 and 2 unit if he's assigned to 3 unit. So he has to make sure when they do their annual house inspection that they're getting that done, that they're completing the assignments, keeping the house clean. There's no personnel problems, making sure the training's being done. They supervise that entire station. So that is a huge undertaking by those captains. A lot of extra work going into that above the lieutenant level. So that's the key component that you'll see administratively, the difference between a lieutenant and captain on a daily basis. Outside of there, it's, a lot of staffing and the training. We do our own hydrant inspections in the city of Columbus, your daily logs and reports and payroll. Yes?
So there are 2 lieutenants per station, but that the captain oversees a lieutenant on each, aren't there 3?
There's 3 unit days. So let's say the captain was assigned to 1 unit. On 2 and 3 unit, there would be a lieutenant assigned to 2 and 3 unit. But that captain on 1 unit supervises those lieutenants to make sure that the things around the fire station are getting completed. There's still a battalion chief that would be responsible for that station operationally throughout that unit day, but that captain still has to oversee the facilities of this firehouse, make sure it's being cleaned, make sure repairs are being done. If there's any personnel problems, he has to address that in coordination with the battalion chiefs as well. Yes, sir.
If it's a multi-unit station, how do that rank structure work?
So the question as far as the multi-unit station, meaning if we had an engine and ladder at that fire station, so obviously there's going to be multiple officers there. There could be, if the captain was assigned on 1 unit again, the captain would be on the ladder, the lieutenant would be on the engine. On those 2 and 3 units, the other unit days, there would be lieutenants across the board on the engine and 1 lieutenant on the ladder going through there. Our captains will always ride the ladder if there is a ladder assigned to that fire station. The battalion chief, a lot of going into there, they start at 7 o'clock. They start an hour earlier than the normal roll call for firefighters, lieutenants, which is 0800. Their responsibility is to ensure that there is staffing levels to the minimum level by 0800. So they go in an hour earlier, look at the staffing levels and see if there needs to be any move within staffing to make sure we can open the doors, as we say, at 0800. From there, they do their rounds. They have to visit each of the 5 fire stations within their battalion, pass on communications, any paperwork, and communicate with the lieutenants and captains within their battalion. And then they come back and they will do the next day staffing. So they project what the staffing will look like the next duty day, which is 3 days from us for now. So today they'd be staffing it for Thursday of this week. Some of the terminology within a division of fire, we call it a TT, which is a temporary transfer. So it's going to go back to that staffing level. We come into the day and we find that at Station 8, they are short a paramedic there. That battalion chief in Battalion 1 will take a paramedic if he has an extra paramedic at a different station and TT them into Station 8 to make sure that they have their minimum staffing to open their doors, as we would say. That could be a 12, 24-hour, could be a 4-hour temporary transfer. It just depends on where that vacancy comes from, whether someone called off sick, they're on vacation, or they're at a training. We talked about it. There's platoons, there's 24, 48s, so we work for 24 hours, off for 48. from 08 to 08 is our 24-hour shift. There is 40-hour personnel, such as myself, assigned to the administration in the training bureau. So I work a 40-hour shift down there, typically 7 to 3 or 8 to 4 is our shift hours there, depending on which bureau you're in. The Kelly Day, so the platoon firefighters and officers, they have a Kelly Day. That is a 3-week cycle. So within 3 weeks, you will work every day of the week when I say that. But whenever your duty day falls on your Kelly Day, which may be Tuesday, you have that day off. So I work, if today was, today's one unit, Monday, Thursday would be my regular scheduled days. But let's say Sunday is my Kelly Day. I don't have to work on Sunday and I have 5 days off. A great benefit, but it gives us the ability to reduce our hours to 48 hours. Otherwise, we'd be at close to 52 hours by working our Kelly Day. A medic versus medics. So the confusion of this can be a medic is a person and a medic is a truck. So it's kind of in the context that it's being used when someone refers to that. A medic is riding a medic. You might hear that. So the paramedic personnel is riding the medic vehicle truck. We don't call them ambulances in Columbus. We call them medics. We don't call them squads. We changed over from that system 20-some years ago, and we stayed with the medic system, calling them medics. Transport B is new within the last 2 to 3 years. So the Transport B is a transport basic. We now staff our medics with 1 paramedic and 1 transport basic, which are both firefighters. Previously, we staffed them with 2 paramedics. Within 2 to 3 years ago, we changed that staffing to 1 paramedic and 1 transport basic. Out of class, or OOC, you might see on some paperwork, that is basically being able to ride above your current grade. So if you're a lieutenant, you can ride as a captain, so on and so forth, and we'll get to that in the next slide. The other one is a relief officer, RO. So they are a floater. So when there is someone off at a station because of vacation, Kelly Day, training, whatever it might be, they're able to backfill that position, so they're not calling in overtime. So someone who's newly promoted, they would typically be an RO until they can get assigned to a station house, and they will just go from station to station to station, potentially every day, unless there's someone that's off for long-term illness, early retirement, and they will fill that in until that vacancy list comes out, which is quarterly. So the out of class, we talk about it, firefighter, lieutenant, lieutenant to captain, captain to battalion chief. You cannot jump 2 grade levels. A lieutenant cannot ride as a battalion chief. A captain can ride as a battalion chief, but cannot go as a deputy chief. There is only one instance where we can bypass that, and that is when a firefighter can ride as a captain for 4 hours. So they will allow that because sometimes there's just some staffing levels. So if you had a single house company with 1 engine there, and the captain had to go to training or something from the last minute, you don't have to bring in a lieutenant from another station, and there's a lot of move around. You can have that firefighter move up for 4 hours. Outside of that, you have to bring a lieutenant in. This will get a little bit kind of when you get into the tactical aspect of test development and just think about what we have on our apparatuses. Pre-connected hand lines, what that means to some civil service personnel is basically, we can pull, as you look at that picture on the left-hand side, the blue line, the hand line, we can pull that 1 3/4 line, and it's already connected, it's already piped into the truck to the tank. So basically, the pump operator pulls a lever, and it's going to charge that hand line with water. It's already determined to be 200 feet or 250 feet, whatever it might be. And then we carry 750 gallons of water on that fire truck. You'll see in the range through the country, 500 to 1,000 gallons of water going through there. And we had a mixture of that before, but we are now at 750 gallons. Because we have so many fire stations, we're so close together, we have hydrants throughout the city. 95% of the city has hydrants. We don't have to carry a lot of water with us, but 750 gallons will typically put out any house fire, 1, 2-bedroom house fire that we have within the city of Columbus. Staffing levels, so this is where could be a unique thing within the city of Columbus. So the staffing level on an engine, depending on if it's a single house or a double house, If there's when I say that, single is an engine, double house would be there's an engine and ladder there as well. AM from 08 to 2000, we have to have 3 personnel on that fire truck. Now we can refer to that as 1 and 2 or 0 and 3. 1 and 2 means that there's 1 officer and 2 firefighters on that engine. 0 and 3 means that there is no officer, there's 3 firefighters, which includes 1 firefighter that rides out of class at that point. So think about that when you staff that and you're going into a tactical component, you have a pump operator, you have an officer, and you have a firefighter in the back. That's not a lot of staffing to do a lot of work that needs to be done on the fire ground. So that is the AM staffing. Within the PM staffing, contractually, we have to be 1 and 3. A firefighter cannot ride out of class after 2,000 hours. It has to be an officer. We call it position for position. After 2,000 hours, if that is a lieutenant position, a lieutenant must be in that seat. If it's a captain must be in there. Same thing for battalion chief. The only difference would be within deputy chief. A deputy chief can be gone for 24 hours. A battalion chief can ride in that position for 24 hours. There's no limits to what that is. So between the lieutenant and captain, battalion chief, it's a position for position after 2,000 hours. So 1 and 3, that is 1 officer and 3 firefighters on a truck from 20 to 0800 hours. Ladder trucks, we have 16 ladder trucks within a division. We have 9 tillers and 7 platforms. Within that, there's 6 extrication trucks, EXT ladders. That is not an addition, that's just, they have combi tools that are on one of those 6 trucks. They have the combi tools, so we call them extrication tools. The jaws of life of common lay term you might hear there. So that just gives them ability to respond to some vehicle responses. You'll see that when we look at those run cards. It might be an EXT ladder that you see on that run card, and that refers to one of the 6 of the 16 ladders in the city have those combi tools with a extrication credential of one of those firefighters on that truck. Staffing is the same as the engine. It's a 1 and 2. You have to have 3 firefighters on there. A ladder is nearly 100% of the time ridden by an officer at all given times. On a very rare occasion, you'll see a firefighter in charge of a ladder. We want to have the most experienced person on the ladder because of the way they operate on the fire ground. They have to have an officer on there. So they'll be at a 1 and 2, and then at PM, they'll be at a 1 and 3. The exception is, of those 6 extrication ladders, they are to be a 1 and 3. Yes, a 1 and 3 during that time. So they have 4 staffing level of 4, 24 hours a day on there. Yes?
The extrication ladders, are they labeled a different way, or do people just know the number of which ladder they are?
There's nothing identification marks on the ladder. It's just knowing which ladders in the city are that way. So the battalion chief knows within his battalion which ladder may or may not be an extrication ladder. Medics, we already talked about this. We changed our system a couple years ago, so it's a firefighter transport B and paramedic, both firefighter positions on there. Once you come out of the academy, you're eligible to ride the medic truck basically on day 1. Kind of have a 6-week allowance to kind of get comfortable with your new environment, and then from there you can be assigned to any fire truck as we train you for every fire truck, excluding the rescue. So engine, ladder, medic, a recruit is eligible basically day 1 to ride on any one of those trucks. The rescue, we have no officers on our rescue. We have 5 rescues in a division, and there are 3 firefighters on there in a 24-hour period. So we can that is staffed that is considered a 0 and 3, 0 and 3 throughout the day, 24 hours. EMS supervisor, we talked about that. That's 1 EMS supervisor per battalion. They oversee the medics and the EMS runs in their respective battalion. And then there's 1 captain that oversees all of the 7 EMS supervisors in the division. Yes?
For the rescues, if there are 3 firefighters and no officers, then who would be in effect in charge in that situation?
So we refer to the person that's in charge of the rescue as an in-charge rescue. They do some extra training to have that in-charge status. But there is no, careful how I say it, not for civil service, but there's kind of a subject of controversy or debate right now, but they're basically not paid any differently to be in charge of that rescue.
They're just known as the in-charge rescue.
Yeah, it's known to say you pass this evaluation, so you have extra training on that truck, but you know going on to there what your expectations are being on that truck, that when you come up to a scene, you are the one that's going to be guiding the other two firefighters on that truck. Otherwise, without that assignment, you know, everyone's in charge or no one's in charge type of thing, so.
Do you ever run into a situation like that where the in-charge is out or off on vacation? Then do you transfer somebody in, or do you let one of the others be in charge?
They have to have the in-charge qualification to be riding in charge. So that's kind of going back into, they can't ride out of class, even though it's not determined a promotion, but we don't let someone as a rescue tech ride as an in-charge rescue tech. So there's not a lot of in-charge rescue techs in the division, so we have to train more of those as we go through it. Some special operations within the division, so unique things that we talked earlier with Sherry and Jeremy, and it's kind of the going on a run and knowing that I have the bomb squad that's part of the division, or rescue units, or arson, whatever it might be. There's a different culture, different mindset when I'm going into that run, where I'm not waiting for 30 minutes for a bomb squad to get there. I know they're right down the street, or they're only minutes away, and I know their operations and who's operating it, so you have more details going into that run and different expectations that I imagine some other cities that don't have a bomb squad associated with their division. So bomb squad is a big one that we have in the division. The hazmat team and our dive team. So our DART team, as it's commonly referred to, is not staffed 24 hours. It's basically cross-manned, we would call it. So there is a DART truck at Station 2 downtown. When there is a DART run that goes out, those personnel get off of their medic engine or ladder where they're assigned on, and then they get onto the dive truck and then will respond. But we don't staff our dive truck 24 hours a day. Our rescue support units, 2 rescue support units, they basically have extra equipment that we can respond to any large rescue event within the city. Command 1 is a large command vehicle that we can use for police and fire, a large second alarm or greater incident, and we have a central communications with extra dispatching abilities and extra communications on that apparatus. Mobile stroke unit, we talked about that, the MSU. REACT, that is an EMS, that is a rapid response emergency addiction crisis team. Real quick, what that is that is a personnel that is staffed with a social worker, a police officer, and a firefighter. When the medics originally go on a run and they find that someone had an opioid overdose because of the epidemic that we're in right now with opiates within the city, we developed this program. They will, based on the request of that patient, to say, yes, I'm requesting some help. The REACT team will go out there, they will speak with that individual and provide them with the resources that would be needed to help them with their addiction. So it's been a great resource for the division. Hopefully we'll expand it more into different avenues as well. But it's been in for a few years now and it's had great results with us.
Chief, is that a designated unit that's staffed with those personnel, or does that come together when needed?
That is a designated 40-hour position that is staffed. So when it's technically under the training bureau because we have our CQI and EMS underneath there. So it's not a permanent staffing yet, but we staff it every day. Kind of administrative things on there, but we do staff that every single day. So we have, it's 4 police officers that work out of our fire administration building. So they typically, they work a lot in the afternoons. So they'll go out around 1 o'clock till 6 o'clock, and then they will go to the different patients that have requested that resources.
Then the initiation is the patient request or the medic chatting with the patient, kind of determining what avenue is appropriate.
Yes.
Correct.
So they kind of provide us with the information. We per se, we don't do a lot of the cold calling. So we kind of have that initial communication with them, and then the React team will follow up more.
So that's a police officer, a firefighter, and a social worker is the React team.
Correct.
All right, so what kind of calls do they take besides overdose?
That is it. So it's not an emergency runs that they go on. Those are, I say they're doctor's appointments type of deal. We go to the house, to the individual patient's residence, and we meet with them there. So kind of on levels, it's a police officer, he or she is in civilian clothing. So we don't want to have that kind of intimidation, but they're there for also the safety because we don't know potentially what we're getting into at that situation. And then the paramedics there for the health aspect of it, and the social workers there for a lot of the, some mental health, but the resources, because they have caveat of resources that they can use and they know better than us. So it's really a individualized personnel that come together as a team to provide any resource that that patient would need.
Is there an SOP for this?
I can't say it's in an SOP.
Okay.
I have to check on that, but I believe it is. There is, I guess, for the medics, when they make that first initiation, I believe that's in an SOP or underneath our protocol, EMS protocol. I have to look to see exactly which one it's in. It's probably in our EMS protocol.
Chief, would they be working with your homeless population and things of that nature also?
I think they probably would if they were called on there. Yeah, we don't per se go to homeless camps and kind of call, yeah. React, R-R-E-A-C-T, it is Rapid Response Emergency Addiction Crisis Team.
Addiction, that's the key.
Do you do any other kind of community paramedicine? Is that pretty much the closest to it you do?
That is what we do right now. I'd say we have some stuff in the beginning works that we're looking into beginning of the year that kind of builds off of the React program, but I think we'll even expand that even more because it's been successful and the city has seen its success, and from Mayor Ginther down, they've continued to provide the resources we need for it.
One more question.
Yes.
Sorry, this is the first time I've heard of this. This opens up a whole new world for testing. But, so the social workers, where do they come from? Are they city employees? Are they outside contractors?
Outside contractors.
Okay.
A lot was initiated through grant funding, was where this originally came from.
Any additional training of your personnel or PD's personnel? to
I
provide
can't
that
speak on PDs. I don't think that there is. I think they kind of seek out people that they feel would be would be good for that job in that position, and kind of same thing on the fire side.
Thank you.
I guess it's not a open position where anyone could bid into it. And then foam trailers, we have 4 or 5 foam trailers throughout the city as well. So you get into large hazmat incidents, oil, gasoline tankers, whatever it might be. We have foam trailers available throughout the city to respond. This is just kind of quick. Let's go over fire responses. Our typical fire response when you go in there. So we won't start at the beginning. That's a report of a fire. That is the initial assignment when you have a report of fire going to a single family, or basically a residential that can be upgraded based on if it's a commercial building, high risk, high rise, going in there. But that's just kind of a quick look at that. What that initial company officer will have, what that battalion chief will have as they make that a working fire. They will get that additional assignment on that row with what was already assigned to that as well. So as you go down each row, it just adds more and more apparatus to that run.
Chief, who can call the working fire?
Anyone that's on the
Okay.
scene.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the ISU?
That is incident support unit, so that's our air supply. So they go out and they fill our air bottles on the scene. They bring some other equipment as well. There's only one vehicle in the city to respond to those.
So Chief, what are they looking for to upgrade to a working fire?
When you run out of your resources, so when you get in there, to upgrade to a working fire is automatically basically when you see, I guess it's kind of what pathway you want to have that question go. When you see fire, when you see heavy smoke, from there you're going to call that working fire. The other thing would be when you want to say maybe go to a second alarm, would be when do you run out of your resources? When do I look at that row of columns and say my initial one is between a report and a working fire, I have 4 engines, and I say I've used all my 4 engines, I have no other engines available and as a resource. And then I need to consider, is this situation going to be ending very soon, or is it not? We haven't found the fire, we're still having more victims, more problems, then I need more resources. At that point, you'll signal the alarm office for a second alarm to get those additional resources.
On that, ES2 is the deputy chief, right?
Correct. There's basically supervisor for the entire unit day. Next one is auto accidents. We talked about the EXT on there. It says EX. So that is one of the ladders. 6 ladders in a division will show up to maybe start the initial operations that are rescue. Since we only have 5 rescues, it takes a little more time to get in certain areas. That's basically a rapid response for our jaws of life, our extrication tools to respond to a scene and begin initial operations before rescue can get there. And then based on the severity of what the incident is, it can come out as a couple of these call types, and then it'd be increased if it's a working extrication, which signals that there is a victim trapped within that car, or they need extra rescue companies there, resources.
Would they necessarily would it go in order? It would only ever get dispatched as an auto accident, or could it get dispatched straight as an auto accident and entrapment? Or do they build on each other, or how does that?
Yeah, basically the gray shaded areas would be your beginning one, and it could begin in any one of those. So your typical auto accident, single car, 2-car accidents that may be on the back roads, 25 miles an hour, it's going into auto accident entrapment. That's based on the information that the caller makes and says, I think there's someone trapped. Then that automatically upgrades it from the alarm office, and they will send out the auto accident entrapment at that point.
In addition to the auto accident, it's already going?
Yes.
Okay, so if they're taking in the information, they shoot out the auto accident, they get a little bit more information, yes, I believe somebody's pinned in the vehicle, they go to the gray shaded auto accident entrapment and a rescue and a battalion chief, is that what that?
Okay, right.
Is that the B?
Yes.
1R and 1B, okay.
That's just basically all the call types that our dispatch center will use. So they have a list of questions they go through there, and from there, based on the caller's information, they will determine which one of these call types that they're going to go through. I've never worked at the alarm office, but I would say it can be very difficult. It'd be interesting to see that aspect of it, but I've never worked there. Fixed command, mobile command, passing command. I think it's always been a subject of debate and controversy within civil service testing, so hopefully I can clarify some of this for you as we go through here. Initially, I want to start off with doing what is a real-world rundown, as we would call it, but going through this scenario and listening to it, and just kind of puts it into perspective of what the command modes that this lieutenant chose, and how that set the tone for the entire fireground event.
All companies responding to 3180 Eisenhower. We got a second call saying there may be people trapped in the basement. Engine 16, okay. Columbus Fire, Station 16 is on the scene. We got a 1.5-story wood frame single family, heavy smoke showing. Make this a working fire. Engine 16 will have accountability. Lieutenant Marshall will have mobile coming in. Stand by for 369 action plan. And then 16 on the scene, we have a working fire. There is a female trapped in the basement that we're on the line with, that can't get out. That's perfect, Columbus. We've got reports of 3 people trapped, 2 in the basement, 1 in the back bedroom. 360 is not able to be completed due to a fence. We're going to be forced into a transitional attack at this time due to the heavy fire. We're going to be making entry on the opposite side for the engine 3/4. Rescue 16 will be working on a primary as soon as possible. I will be passing command. No, 360 completed due to a fence. We're making a transitional attack. We do have a fire on the fire. We're now the officer strong beat from the A side, and I pass command. Copy, water on the fire, and copy your passing command. You're making entry on the A side. Engine 13 on the hydrant. Engine 13 on the hydrant. Engine 19 on the scene. On the fire, 19. Test yourself, command. Fifth command, outside. Where's the hydrant? Where's the hydrant?
So that had a lot of commands in there, which I think is a great thing, but one of the things in there is a nearly perfect rundown and ready to report due to the circumstance of all the information we were getting in there, right? Multiple victims in there, person trapped in the basement, but you can see how important that rundown is and why you consistently test us on that, because that set the tone for the entire fireground. I happen to be the battalion chief on that one. That was on the north end of the district that I was in, basically near the old location for civil service building on Piedmont. It was right up the street from there. So I was a good 7 minutes away from that scene, but there was no doubt when I pulled up to that scene, I knew exactly what was going on. I knew who was where, what was going on without question, because that lieutenant set the tone for that fire scene. And thankfully, everyone got out of that structure. We did pull 1 victim out, but he did survive later on. So fine job by everyone and all that. So going into that, you heard he initially took mobile command, then he took confirmed with the alarm office that he was passing command, and then from there, the next officer that arrived off engine 19 took a fixed command. So within that scenario, we saw all 3 command modes go through there. So I think it was a great example of the command mode. So we'll get into what fixed command, mobile, and passing command is. Fixed command is the goal of every fireground event, every incident. There will be a fixed command. You need someone on the operation level to be outside to be commanding what is going on in the scene. And that is a job of eventually what would be the battalion chief as you go through there. So the goal is that every single time there is a fixed command into there. That incident started off being mobile, they passed it, and then it got to the fixed command at that point. Because you're not going to be so enamored with what's going on and the fine details. You're in the outside, you're fixed command, and you can guide that. You can be the supervisor for that incident. Mobile command, as he did originally, now you could say, to make it perfect, maybe he could have passed command it right away, because when he arrived on the scene, he had 1 engine and 1 rescue with him, which is 7 firefighters, 7 personnel, 1 officer, and 6 firefighters. When he initially arrived on the scene, and probably a medic there as well, but they're not going to be have their turnout gear ready to go. So limited resources on there, multiple victims in there. He could have passed command right away. So when I pass command, that means the next arriving apparatus from another station, when that officer gets there, their number 1 job, the only thing they can do is to take a fixed command position. They can't say, well, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to start doing this or do that. No, they pass command. Now, the little caveat to that would be if you're at a double house, you have an engine and a ladder there. You have 2 officers that show up at the same scene to the same event. When they pass command, they're passing it to the next station. I'm not going to be on the engine and pass it to my ladder officer, because they're on the scene at the same time. There's things that need to be get done because of the incident. Whether it's we don't have enough staffing, there's multiple victims, there's heavy fire. If we can do something right now to help control this environment, they're going to pass command based on what resources they have. And that resources could be the experience level. You can get on the scene and say, I have 2 20-year veterans. We're very experienced. We can do this. maybe they can be the fixed command and those other firefighters can go inside. Well, the opposite would be, I have two basically new recruits that only have 2 weeks within the division. So now at that point, I have to be with them. I can't let them operate alone on the inside. So they would be passing command to the next person going in there. So mobile command is basically, you're gonna take a mobile command because you feel that this operation, this incident is gonna be ending at very soon. I'm gonna able to take some action and alleviate this incident, and nothing else will need to be done, and we're not gonna need additional resources. This isn't gonna be a second alarm fire. It's gonna be quickly alleviated and completed, and you would take a mobile command. So it says it within the SOPs, some of the things in there as we go through it. Why would you do it initially? 'Cause there's nothing showing. Quickly contain with few resources while waiting arrival. So we'll get into that when we get into passing command. And that's the situation is quickly stabilized, preliminary investigation, no need for additional companies, situation contained, command is transferred. Right, you show up and say, this is easy, I'd say this is easy, but this is something we can get done with the companies right here. I'm gonna take a mobile command and investigate or get some more information from there. That's the key components of taking your mobile command and going in there. Passing command, as that lieutenant did, is based on what you need. We talked about whether it's resources, based on the incident, the level of the incident it's gonna be going, it's gonna go into a second alarm potentially, why you would pass command. I need myself to be inside doing operations to help alleviate this incident. So I'm gonna pass command to the next officer. Even though that lieutenant passed command on there, when he said, Columbus Fire, I am passing command, he is still in charge of that incident until someone else comes there and says, hey, I'm taking command from you. So when someone else gets on the radio and says when they say Columbus Fire to command, that lieutenant is still command. So I know it's a little weird to think about that, but basically, I can't be 7 minutes away and take command of an incident I haven't shown up to yet. So until that officer gets there to say, hey, I have command from now, and they change the command, they transfer command, that personnel that passed command, that first officer that passed command is still the command. So at that point, he's considered like a mobile command, right? He's inside, he's still command, he's doing things. But the big distinction is that next officer gets on there, is telling them, you must take command of this incident. You have to be a fixed command when you get on there, if the battalion chief's not the next.
So in that scenario, like you just had the audio, it's not rank-based, it's riding position-based. So it doesn't matter if there's a captain on an arriving ladder coming in. When the lieutenants announce passing command, it's just whoever is on that next arriving company that shows up.
Correct.
That passing command to that riding position, and then that person establishes a fixed command?
Yes.
Is obligated to do a fixed command?
Yeah, it doesn't matter what level, what apparatus that they're on. With 16 ladders in the city, if you're not a house with a ladder, you're gonna have a ladder there very quickly. So typically, you might see that ladder being the one that takes command. But it kind of just scenario based on this one particularly, it was an engine 19 that took the second command, but basically received that passing command and established fixed command on there. So it was a lieutenant that did it. Yes.
So in general, would all three of these then be the case at a particular incident? Like, so if you have a particular incident, in general, are you always going to have some variety of all three of these going?
No, this is a unique case where we had all three within this incident. If you go onto a report of a fire and let's say someone didn't open the flue in their chimney and they have a little smoke inside the house, and I pull up to the scene and I see just a little bit of haze of smoke in there, I'm probably gonna take mobile command and I'm gonna go in and investigate, get some more information, and from that point, the scene is gonna be quickly stabilized and we can contain the event to a couple of companies as an engine ladder as would be. So
Just be mobile.
mobile command and it'll be stopped. So basically when when you do that, you're at mobile command, and it's gonna be quickly stabilized. You have the resources on there, so you're not officially saying I'm being fixed command, but you're the one. They know when something needs to be, a decision to be made, they know where to come to for that command into there. You could show up and take fixed command right from the beginning. That would be, a prime example would be you show up to a large apartment and you have fires shooting on the roof or a unit. You know it's gonna be a second alarm. Someone needs to take fixed command right away. And we'll kind of talk about that when you get into divisions and groups and see how complex this could be. If someone doesn't initially start that, those groups and divisions, things are gonna get way out of control. It's gonna take a lot to get people and personnel back in place and in order from there. So you could start off as mobile, you could start off as passing, you could start off as fixed. It's all scenario based. Yes?
So when you take a mobile command, are you automatically deviating from 2 and 2 out?
No, depending on what we'll talk a little bit about that in the deviation, because Jeremy specifically wanted me to talk about that 2 in, 2 out and the deviation of it. Scenario based, you might show up as they did in this scene with an engine and rescue on scene right away. Engine rescue medic on scene right away. The 2 in, 2 out is, could be something to be debated a little bit and why we would deviate from that SOP. We'll talk about that, some reasons why you would deviate from there on the 2 in, 2 out rule. But typically in Columbus, we have apparatus on top of each other in a blink of an eye. So that is a huge benefit for us within the city. Within 30 seconds, I'll have, I call a report of fire right now. Within 3.5 minutes or less, probably less than 3 minutes, I'll have 6 companies out in front of this building. So it's a very short time frame when you think about that. When you think about it in the rural areas, when you have longer response times, that's when 2 in, 2 out is going to be adhered to more often, would be my perception. And the other thing is passing command can only be passed once. Command be only passed once. You can't just keep on saying, I don't want it, you do it. No, I don't want it, you do it. It can only be done once. And that makes sure that that next arriving officer is fixed command at that point. Because what would we do? We would just keep on passing it until the battalion chief got on the scene and takes fixed command. And then at that point, there's going to be complete confusion and chaos more than any fire scene that there is at that point.
So in a daytime response, it's possible that that unit takes, first in unit takes mobile command and then passes command, and the next arriving unit has, I'd have to go back and think, next arriving unit minimum staffing could be as little as
2 firefighters.
2 firefighters and an officer, or?
So let's say, like on that scenario, engine 16, rescue 16 pull up, they pass command. Engine 19 receives that passing command. So engine 19 is going to be fixed command. Now he has a driver, operator, and a firefighter on the apparatus with him. What he would do would be, he's the option, he can have them help him out with accountability or different tasks at the fixed command post. Or he could reassign his personnel and say, hey, go with engine 16 and help them with water, fire extinguishment or search. Or pump operator, go help the first engine in, get a supply, get a hydrant. So he has that ability to reassign as would need be that personnel. Yes?
So it's possible then for something to transition from, say, fixed to mobile without being called a passing command. Is that accurate to say?
From fixed to mobile?
Right. Or is it always necessarily the case that you're shifting from fixed to mobile, you're going to be called passing while you're shifting? Does that make sense?
So remember, our goal is to every incident to get to fixed command. So that's our end point. So we won't go backwards into a mobile or a passing command at that point. Okay. So once we establish a fixed command, until that scene is completed, that fixed command remains that way.
Unless, of course, the command post catches fire.
Yeah. Then we don't know what to do at that point. We don't know who to call.
Right now,
Catch us all off guard on that one, Joel.
Yeah.
So on scene radio report, size up 360 incident action plan. I'm gonna go back to that same run we did. We'll quickly listen to the beginning portions of it because he did such a good job. Now we want to focus in and think about the size up. What information was given on that radio report for myself that's 7 minutes away to listen and go, where are they at? What are they responding to? What kind of house? What does it look like? What kind of fire event are they having? We're getting radios from the FAOs on the radio telling us that there's multiple victims into there. So think about if you're coming into a scene, what information has been valuable by listening to this to help you go, you know what, I can handle the situation when I go in there. I exactly know where to start, where to begin from when I get on the scene from there. And then it'll have a 360 and it gets into an incident action plan as well.
All companies responding to 3180 Eisenhower. We got a second call saying there may be people trapped in the basement. And it's 16, okay. Columbus Fire, Station 16 is on the scene. We got a 1.5-story wood frame single family, heavy smoke showing. Make this a working fire. Engine 16 will have accountability. Lieutenant Marshal will have mobile come in. Stand by for 360 and an action plan. Engine 16 on the scene, we have a working fire. There is a female trapped in the basement that we're on the line with. We can't get out of it.
That's for Columbus. We've got reports of 3 people trapped, 2 in the basement, 1 in the back bedroom. 360 is not able to be completed due to a vent. We're going to be forced into a transitional attack at this time due to the heavy fire. We're going to be making entry on the opposite side with the engine 3/4. Rescue 16 will be working on a primary as soon as possible. I'll be passing command.
No, 360 completed due to a vent. We're making a transitional attack.
Welcome to do what's on the fire. We're now the officer strong. He's on the A side. And I pass.
So again, he gave us a lot of valuable information going into there, what kind of house it was, kind of fire, where the victims were at. But as it is in the SOPs, as you go through and test that, he hit it the way it would be directly. Now I can go through probably 1,000 of them that don't say it how the SOPs would be. And it's very little information, and it's not really that valuable. But that's just the tendency in we'd say in the street, and we've been pushing this way for the last, I don't know, 5 or 6, 7 years. But he hit the size up. He told us 1.5 story, working fire, victims, 360. He said, stand by for a 360 and it's an action plan. And the premise is I can't tell you what to do on that scene as an incident action plan until I have all the information that I can possibly gather at that time. And that includes doing a 360 around that structure. If it's a basement fire that's shooting out the back window on the Charlie side, I'm not going to know about that until someone tells me or I visualize it with the 360. So that's the importance of seeing all sides of the building when we talk about a 360. Once you have all that information, then from there we can have an incident action plan. We don't want to make an incident action plan right off the bat because we could be wrong and we readjust our resources as we go through there. So an excellent job out of the lieutenant to basically run down what he sees, stand by for 360 incident action plan. I'm going to get all the information I can get on this, and then from there I'm going to guide the companies that are in there, and then he takes a mobile command and eventually passes command as well. So as myself responding into there, there's no question of what that scene looked like, what my expectations were when I got into that scene, and set the tone for that entire scene as well. Yes, sir.
And you may cover this later. He used the term transitional attack and then offensive attack. Are we going to define transitional attack?
Well, we can define it now. We'll get in, talk a little bit about offensive, defensive here. And I had transitional up there originally as a strategy, and I think that's up to discussion. Kind of see transitional not as a true strategy. Right? It's a temporary attack as you go through there. So when I speak of transitional attack would be, you have heavy fire in a structure and you're basically going to take the hand line, and you're gonna put the fire from the outside, and you're gonna knock down the fire as best you can from the outside. But that is a quick 10, 15 seconds to make that more tenable conditions to go inside. If I have a two-story house with fire shooting out of the porch, I'm not gonna go inside that building. I'm gonna be on the outside. I'm gonna put the fire out before I make entry into that building. Well, same thing. If I can knock down that fire a little bit, make it more tenable for myself, any possible victims, as we've proven, it's gonna be beneficial to everyone up there. But that's not we're gonna stand outside and knock the fire out from the outside. If it's structurally sound and we can go inside that building, we're gonna go inside that building and do an offensive strategy.
So it's more of a tactic?
Yes.
than-
Yeah, I don't
but
think
it
it's
does-
a-
It does announce, though, that this is what we're doing, so is that part of the IAP?
For the transitional?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess when he says transitional, it's an understanding of they're gonna progress into offensive attack at that point. So it's a, as you said, a tactic to get to the strategy. Overall, it's still an offensive strategy. The plan is we're gonna go inside, but before we do that, we have to do a quick transitional attack, knock it down, make it a little bit easier for everyone, and then we're gonna advance inside of there. All right, now we will move on to talking about strategy, tactics, and task, and what the differences are in those. So strategy is what the battalion chief, the incident commander, is gonna be focusing on. We talked a little bit about that, right? Offensive versus defensive as they go into there. From there, they're gonna decide, is this gonna be an offensive attack or strategy or defensive strategy? And then from there, they assign their groups and divisions. We'll get into groups and divisions and define those here in a couple slides from now. But that's the focus of them. They organize this whole thing when they look at this, offensive, defensive. Now, when we say battalion chief incident commander, that's our end goal, correct? But when you first arrive on that scene, you are the incident commander. So they're kind of going through the same thing, thinking offensive, defensive into there. But I'm kind of setting this into, we're 10 minutes into the scene or 5 minutes into the scene, things have been established. If I could put all my pieces together and then say go, this is how I would start off with. As the incident commander, battalion chief, he would determine it's gonna be offensive, defensive, what divisions and groups, we'll talk about that later, what we need to do to accomplish those strategies. The next step is your tactics. So those are gonna be made up with your company officers. They're gonna be given within those divisions and groups what their tactics are, and it's gonna be multiple tactics that accomplish the strategy. So based on what the battalion chief says, he might say, I need a fire attack, water extinguishment, search and rescue, ventilation, salvage groups or divisions. Those things are gonna accomplish the strategy for that fire ground event. And then we get into tasks, the firefighters. They're the ones that are doing the work. Those are the tasks on the scene. Multiple tasks accomplish the tactic. Multiple tactics accomplish their strategy. So what do you think about that all related to sports is when you go into a game, a football game, you might say, hey, we're gonna play this game and this opponent doesn't have a good run defense. So our strategy is we're gonna run the ball. That's the coach's strategy. Now the assistant coach strategy, the offensive coordinator is gonna say, okay, we're gonna run off a left tackle a lot because they don't have a strong, that's their weak side. That's the tactic of it. Then the task is the blocking, the snapping the ball, handing off the ball, then running the ball. Those are the tasks. The firefighters are accomplishing things to be able to do that run offense and then to win the game through that strategy. So you look at that picture, and that's kind of probably a fire attack group for a high rise. And you can look in there, they've been assigned a group, fire attack group. They have their tools that they need to accomplish that tactic, but each one of them has a task that they're going to be given when they already have and know when they get to that floor. The firefighter with the shoulder load on, or hose load on his shoulder is going to be one that's going to be hooking up to the standpipe. He's going to want to be deploying the hand line. You got the high-rise pack, you got multiple tools into there. They each have a task on their, assigned to them when they get to that fire floor to accomplish that tactic. And those tactics will accomplish the strategy, which is an offensive strategy for there. Benchmarks, these are keywords or phrases that need to be said on all incidents because it's basically, it's a one, and we know it's, the fire ground is being accomplished as far as what the strategy, the tactics, and the tasks are. But it's also for data to analyze data so we can know when was a primary all clear given, when was water in the fire given, how long did it take, so we can use it for training or to see was there delayed or why did things go wrong, why was there such a long reflex time before there's water on the fire. So those are on every single working incident. Those key phrases should be said by someone in there. So who's going to be in the incident command, whether it's the initial operating company officer or going up to that end goal fixed command of a battalion chief. Working fires are going to be typically be given during your rundown, unless you come to an event where it's light smoke or no smoke, and then you discover inside that structure that it is a working fire. From that point, you make it a working fire. 360 complete. 360 complete with information, or as we saw in that, or listened to in that audio tape, said 360 will be unable to do a 360 due to a fence. You can't expect a firefighter to jump a 6-foot high fence to go there and search in there. So if they can't get in there, direct access, doors locked or something, we're not going to take a lot of extra time to see what's going on that back side of the building. So they just have to say why they weren't unable to accomplish that 360 if they could not accomplish it. The RIT established, that can be, you can see within there, they need to say the team and the location of the RIT. So RIT companies, per the SOP, are the third engine and third ladder that arrive on the scene. We very rarely deviate from that. As the incident commander, that's almost a golden rule. It's the third engine, third ladder that goes onto there. You can justify, you can deviate from there without a problem, but it's one of those things where you want that RIT company established. They know their assignment when they're going in there. We know, hey, I'm probably gonna be a third engine in there, and they are thinking we're gonna be the RIT companies into there. So we maintain that almost like a golden rule. The third engine, third ladder will be the RIT companies. So it might just simply be saying, engine 2, ladder 2 are my RIT companies on the alpha side. And that is the RIT established on the benchmarks that we go through there. Water on the fire, simple as it is, whoever has the hand line, as soon as they put water on the fire, they could be announcing that. It will be repeated by the incident commander as we go through there. Now, does that mean the fire is out? Maybe the main body of the fire, they have water in the fire, but there could be other rooms or areas of that structure that have fire as well. But at least we know they're accomplishing that task. The event should get better because we are putting water in the fire at that point. Situation contained, that means that this incident does not need any other resources on the scene. We have all the resources that we need on the scene. You can still have an active fire in a structure and call a situation contained. More than likely you're not going to, but if we get the water in the fire report, we see conditions are getting better, you can call out and say, Columbus Fire, we have a situation contained. That means I'm not going to be asking for any other resources. I believe that I have all the resources on scene that I need to completely mitigate this situation. Now, if I need to get more resources, I can, but it's kind of establishing where we're at, where that, the mindset of the incident commander is at that point. And the last one is a personal accountability report, a PAR. That is just making sure you have accountability of all your companies and all your firefighters on the scene and going around and calling for engine 1, ladder 2, I need a PAR, and they go through and say, yes, I have all my firefighters are accounted for and they are safe on the scene. And then there's multiple events that would occur of why we would be giving a PAR besides basically after a situation contained would be receiving a PAR at that point. Make sure everyone's accounted for. Yes.
Just from a admin, I guess, perspective, maybe, who tracks to ensure that these benchmarks are all being articulated on the scene, and if they're not, what happens?
There's no, I would say, it could be the deputy chief talking to that battalion chief or incident commander and saying, hey, why wasn't the water in the fire given? Why wasn't this or that not given on the fire ground? And they could discuss that. They could, at the very end, we talk about they could go to a memorandum of counseling. Is that typically done? No. I would say that we've been very good about getting all these benchmarks through there. It's newer, I'd say newer as in the last 4 or 5 years. But you will consistently hear these things on the fire ground because they're not so brand new, we've never done them before. It's just another way of tracking it. So the fire alarm office will hit a button and say, okay, water's on the fire. So when they go back and look, how long was that time period before arrival to water on the fire to help them out as well. So we don't, I guess that's a whole other discussion administratively, whether it's counseling, discipline, and that.
On scene who are recognizing, and if they recognize a gap or something, they can address that with the person later, or?
Yeah, we will do critiques afterwards, and they can discuss that as well. So they'll talk about what went good, what went bad, just quickly. If it is a larger event, then we will sit down the next duty day typically and just have a more formalized critique at that point.
Chief, on that, just say it's a single-family residence fire, and you're the battalion chief responding, so you're the incident commander at the fixed command. Is it just you? Or do you have a command tech, or do you have some other, or is it conceivable that if you feel the need, you can pull additional people off a company to assist?
To manage
well,
radios?
and going back to, checking your benchmarks and going through however you do it, mentally or with a physical checklist.
There is no one,
Just you, the lone incident commander?
unless you pull another resource,
Okay.
it is not assigned. There's no one assigned to you unless you choose to do that yourself.
So does the battalion chief maintain an accountability system?
Yeah, on a smaller event. So the key would be once you make it a working fire, you get that second battalion chief. Now they typically will go to the Charlie side. Now you could also pull another personnel. Again, it doesn't take a battalion chief. Not to say it's, not that difficult to say, hey, this firefighter on the medic, come over here, I need you to take accountability and have the board and say, what is being done when you see this being a larger event. With an experienced battalion chief, they can typically, single-family residents, they can keep accountability pretty easy. As long as you maintain who's going in and outside that door, they can do that. But as far as, personnel assigned to it, we don't have personnel directly assigned to it. You have to pull that resource. And you would be in charge of accountability unless you choose to assign it to someone else.
As your incident escalates and your fixed command post starts taking greater shape, and you get the ISU incident support, no, you have a command truck or vehicle, is that staffed waiting to come out, or is that kind of like the dive truck where I've got to pull some other people off other units to staff it and bring it?
Yes, it is more like the dive truck. It's going to be, I'd say, on scene, it's going to feel like a significant delay before that truck gets there. It will not be an immediate resource, especially if it's, way out of town or on the outskirts of town. It could be 20, 30, 40 minutes depending on when it's called for. When they get someone who's specifically able to drive it and operate it, it could be easily 20, 30 minutes. So that's more of your events that are going to be, hey, this is going to be 4, 5, 6, 12-hour event going into it. So standing operating procedures, they want to be specifically talk about basement fires, and we'll talk about that. If you have questions with the SOPs, I want to address it. What I don't want to do is go through here, find every detail of the SOPs and go through here. Obviously, that could be time-consuming and very drowsy to a lot of people. So we'll talk specifically about basement fires. We'll get into the SOPs on the next slide, but basically what it comes out to be is in a basement fire, that's a highly dangerous situation when we're going down into a fire. We want to be able to apply water the quickest and per se the safest way that we can. At some point, we might have to take that venture down the stairs. What we also want to do is reduce the amount of firefighters above the basement fire, specifically directly above that fire as we go through there, because we don't want to go in there and have that floor weakened or there's holes and then have a firefighter or firefighters fall into that basement in there. So that's kind of the summarization of what that is. 360, if there's an exterior access to the basement, your Bilco doors, your cellar doors, you're gonna use that to make entry into there, as opposed to going inside the house where you don't know where the basement stairs are at. You can guess, get a good assumption, but it's not always gonna be what you think. And if you have a delay getting into there, it's only making things worse. So if you have an outside entrance into there, which typically new houses are not, but a lot of older houses, like in this neighborhood, might have it, to have that direct access from the outside, we use that first to get into there, because it can be quick in and quick out if we need to get out of that situation. That's kind of that summary of it. I don't, if you guys have any other thing you want me to expand upon on the basement fire aspect of it. Okay. I'll give the chiefs a few minutes, a few seconds to look at that. Yes?
Any specific tools for the basement that Columbus uses or doesn't use that maybe other jurisdictions would or wouldn't use?
You know, you could talk about using a resin distributor nozzle,
You have those?
we have some, yeah, and with some.
You have cellars in the basement, so.
Yeah, so what that is basically you drop a hand line down a hole, and we create our own fire suppression. And it just, you charge it and it spins, and it's just like having a fire alarm, or sorry, a sprinkler system in there. So we're developing our own sprinkler system when we do that. And that's what the premise of that resin distributor nozzle is. So while there could be a piercing nozzle where you would pierce into the wall or to floor to get there. So basically you want to take the water into the basement without putting personnel inside that environment would be a key thing. That's kind of two tools that would be situation dependent whether you can use them or not.
That forces you to look above the basement fire.
Yes.
So a lot of don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of, you know, a lot of what that situation is, where the fire is, if it's known where it is. If you want to, you know, knock out the basement window, you can put the nozzle through the basement window, knock it down a little bit, per se that transitional attack, and then make an attack down the stairs. So I know we're getting kind of in the weeds of things, and it's kind of, there's no perfect answer. As a, you know, typical fire ground, there's no perfect answer. So deviation of the SOPs, 2 in, 2 out. So we talked a little bit about this earlier. To deviate from that SOP would be to say, I had a known victim inside that structure. Now, how would you know you have a known victim inside that structure? One, someone called, like we heard on that radio report earlier. You had a neighbor and they said, hey, I know so-and-so lives in that house. I know that they are home. Someone else came out of that house and said, so-and-so is still in there. Now, those are easily known. Now you can have that assumption of, I come up and it's midnight and there's multiple cars inside the driveway. There's a pretty good chance there's someone in there. And that's a determination. Am I going to deviate from this 2 in, 2 out for what would be potentially a high probability of a victim inside there? Yes, more than likely you are going to do that based on the information into there. So it's the information you can gather when you initially get on the scene to determine whether you're going to deviate from that SOP or not. Again, with the City of Columbus, we have that benefit where within seconds of each other, we have multiple companies on the scene. So it's rare we're going to fall into a situation unless you are driving down the street and find a fire and no one called it in, you're the first one to call it in, and there's going to be a big delay of that. But there is that chance of the 2 in, 2 out. But to violate that would be because you have a known survivor or known victim in there. If you come up to a vacant structure and it's all boarded up, am I going to have an overwhelming need to do a search and rescue in there right off the bat without doing some precautionary work? Probably not. Unless I see doors and windows have been taken off of there, someone had to take them off, there's a chance that someone might be in there. But if it's completely boarded up, I have no reason to believe that there's anyone inside that structure. Eventually, we will get in there, and I say eventually within minutes, and do that, but we're not going to cut down the door and make an immediate attack inside typically. Yes, Rich?
I love animals as much as the next person, but we say no victim, you are just talking about humans, right?
Yes. We would do every effort to do that, but yeah, it's good.
My dog's still in there or something.
Yeah. Divisions and groups. So the clarification on divisions and groups. Divisions is an area. An area might be the floor, the first floor, second floor, third floor. Or it could be as you look at a structure, and let's say we're at this structure here, we're on Broad Street, we're looking at the front door of this structure, we go clockwise around there. Alpha would be Broad Street. Then we go clockwise to Bravo will be your left-hand side of the structure, Charlie's the back, and then D to your right as you go in there, A, B, C, D, looking at that Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. That is an area. So you could say, hey, you're Bravo division. That means you're responsible for whatever happens on this side of the structure. You are responsible for fire attack or search, whatever that might be. A group is more of a task or a tactic. Let's talk about ventilation, search and rescue, fire attack group. Those are specific to that. So if someone is assigned the Division 2, second floor of the structure, and someone else is assigned search group, per se that Division 2 can take that off their checklist of having to do a search on that Division 2. Because the search group is responsible for the entire building unless otherwise noted, but in very general, they're responsible for the entire building. Now that does not mean that Division 2 just says, we're not doing any search and rescue. That means maybe they're doing a fire attack, and as they go, of course they're gonna do a little search and rescue, but they're not going to branch off and have responsibility to look at every single room as they do a fire attack. Or after they knock out the fire, they're not gonna have to go back and say, we got an all clear on the second floor, Division 2, because someone else has been assigned that position, that task or tactic is going into it. So it's a functional assignment is what your group is. So this is just an example how you break this down. This is the city health department. It's down the street from here. You're breaking it down to Division 1, 2, 3, and 4, a large structure where you need to be designated where you're assigned to, who your team is, who your task is, and what radio talk group that you're on. And it's the organizational level of that fixed command that gives them the ability to operate on that level. If we didn't have divisions or groups, it'd be very difficult for that fixed command, that incident commander, to say, where is that company at? Where is this company at? When you assign engine 1, engine 2, ladder 1, your Division 1, something happens on that floor, or I need something to happen, you know exactly who to call or who's responsible for that area. Same thing as a group. If it's a search group, you know who's assigned to it, where they're at, and what is going on within that group. So on this one, we have divisions, there could be floors, and then outside of that, you have groups, search group, the salvage group, your water supply group, we're gonna need a lot of water, and your rehab group. It's gonna be a lot of resources, a lot of firefighters on here, and they're gonna need rehab as you're going through it. Because eventually, it could look like that, which was a third alarm fire in the early 2000s. So the building was it was a state building, it was being renovated, the city was gonna get it, and caught fire and went to at least a third alarm fire at that point. So you can see, sitting out there as a fixed command, incident commander and a fixed command, you have a lot of resources coming to this structure. And you have to be able to organize it and know who's where, what they're doing, and what's going on at any given moment. Yes?
So for divisions, like you said, it's an area, and it could reference floors, but it could also reference the A, B, C, D area of a structure. Mm-hmm. What's the most typical thing that it references? Floors, area of a structure, like what's...
Typically, probably more areas, outside areas. Kind of hard to say. We don't have a lot of high-rise fires in the city. We have multiple apartment building or multiple floor apartments that might call it be on fire. So looking at this structure here, if the fire is on the third floor, I don't really need a Division 1 and Division 2 because there's nothing going on per se. That might be a salvage group where they're trying to protect whatever's on that first and second floor, whether it's computer or artwork or in general things. they can use that, that'd be a group assigned to that. The action, the operations are gonna be on Division 3, Division 4, we're gonna be doing fire attack or search and rescue going into there. You think about if we had a fire at a Home Depot, we're familiar with the large structural area of that. That needs to be divided into your outside areas, your outside divisions, your Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, because you could have people going into multiple areas. One could be going to the Alpha side, and you're familiar with that. There's a lot of the checkout areas, right? They can only go so far into that structure. And then there needs to be another group going into the Bravo side to see if they can find the fire or do what they need to do. So you have someone else in command over there, and they be the Bravo division supervisor. I'm kind of breaking it down a little bit further now, but they would be supervising those companies into there, and that supervisor reports to the fixed command, incident commander.
What happens if you need divisions by floor and by area? Is that just going to be lots of divisions?
You basically, you could take a building like this one, and if it's only occurred on the left-hand side, you could put that right side and make that an exposure, and talk about that being like the delta exposure as you look at the structure here. So if the fire is Division 3 on this side, chances are there's not much going on over here, so this could be a group, or you can make that an exposure division, depending on how you want to divide it. So you kind of divide that building in half, and then you're dividing it up over this way. This could be not much going on, this could be a circle over here, and make sure there's no fire.
I'm sorry, Chief, just so that we get that, can you do it over here? I apologize.
What did I say? So it would be the divisions. If we had the fire on Division 3, assigning Divisions 3, Division 4, and then I could cut that building in half, and this could be a group or division / exposure doing some work over here, functional assignment. But over here, I have the divisions working with groups as well. So a group does not work for a division, and a division does not work for a group. They report to the incident commanders. They don't report to each other. Incident communications, radio channels. This is probably a unique thing for Columbus Fire. We'll get to that in the next slide. The other thing would be your fire ground reports, your condition, actions, needs. That is when the incident commander calls a company that's doing interior work and says, Engine 8 from command. Engine 8 will reply what their conditions, their actions, and their needs are. It helps cut down and reduce radio traffic. Instead of saying, Engine 8, go. Okay, command, this is Engine 8, I need you to do this, or where are you at? They automatically say, 5th floor, white smoke, we don't need anything. And then that could be done, and that communication could stop, and they can move on to the next one. So that's your CAN report. Situation contained, we talked about that. That means all resources on scene is all that the incident commander needs, and basically the event will be stabilized soon after this. PAR, gone over that. Urgent calls would be communication where you feel that there's could be possibly a danger to firefighters on there. You see a wall leaning with the possible collapse. There's urgent because you have a loss of water supply. Those are urgent calls to let people on the scene know what's going on there. Anyone can make an urgent call. So you could be a firefighter observing that and make an urgent call on the fire ground. The incident commander's got to make a judgment unless you help them out and give them that resource or that solution for them. Signal low, that alerts the alarm office to say that this incident is over. There is no other companies on the scene, and basically that radio channel is cleared and there is no one on that scene anymore. The event is completed and everyone's going back to the fire station. Code 1 is for any victim on there, and you're confirming that you have a victim that is deceased from fire or EMS. You'll hear code 1 on there.
Chief, can I go back to your CAN report?
Yes, sir.
And I may have misunderstood. So if IC calls Engine 8, IC doesn't say, Engine 8, give me a CAN report. Engine 8 knows, hey, IC's calling me. My first action is to give a CAN report, or the response is a CAN report?
It should be, response to give a canned report. What is practice and what is played and what is on paper is a little different, but the expectation.
of command is that when they call a company, that company would lead off with a CAN report, and it can be
Yeah.
as brief as what you just.
Unless they were in previous communication recently. So like that transfer of command, when you're gonna transfer it, if you can't do it face-to-face, you're gonna do that canned report from that person, essentially. Conditions, actions, needs. So Fireground Radio Talk Group assignment, this is the SOPs. When we respond to an incident, and that is any apparatus, anyone that was assigned to it, the 3 engines, 2 ladders, rescue, battalion chief, they are gonna be listening to 2 radio channels. So you need 2 radios to do this. One will be battalion, I'll use the example, battalion 1. They'll be on battalion 1 Fireground. The other one will be battalion 1 IC, Incident Command. The purpose of that is the Fireground channel, once we begin operations on the Fireground, that's your main channel, they will be doing the radio report, they'll be doing a rundown, they'll be making operations, incident action plan, just as we heard on that radio report. That was done on the battalion 1 Fireground. The IC channel is used to provide, I'll say, second level priority information when responding to the incident. And that could be Engine 8 is calling because they can't get their truck started, they're in an accident, they need to be replaced, or maybe they're jumping a run meaning, hey, we're close to that incident, we're gonna take that run, we weren't originally on the run card of that. It's pertinent information as the incident commander, it's nice to know, but we do not wanna take that information and override what someone is doing potentially on the scene. So if we only had 1 radio channel and that lieutenant from Engine 16 pulled up to that audio clip that we used and was getting on there about to say everything that he did, but someone cut him off on the channel and said, hey, go ahead and put us out of service, we can't get our truck started, we're gonna need to replace, and takes a minute to do this, we've completely missed out on that radio report, which is our priority. So it's prioritizing the information that we need to hear. The battalion Fireground is the top priority. The IC is the second priority going into that. Arriving on the scene, who arrives on scene, when you get into the 3rd engine, 2nd ladder, they're gonna report on the IC channel that they arrived on the scene. The incident commander is gonna be listening to 2 channels. The Fireground channel to listen once they're on scene, to hear the operations and communicate with interior companies. And then the IC, because they might hear Rescue 16's on the scene. Okay, now I can put them to work and tell them what to do if they don't report face to face. So there is 2 radio channels at all time listening to this.
Would there be communication between the alarm office or the dispatch and your battalion chief or your IC on the IC top group?
Yes. So I guess consider two modes of it. One is a response mode, where typically the FAO, where our companies are saying, I am responding, put me out of service, or I want to add me to that run card. That's responding to the incident. It's around those 2 channels. The Fireground channel is sitting there waiting for, maybe we have victims and they're in the basement, we're on the phone with them. That's a priority information. Or the radio report, that's your Fireground information. That's a priority. Once we are on scene, the operations are on Fireground, that IC channel could be used for people marking on the scene to say, hey, I'm on the scene, Rescue 16's on scene, Ladder 2's on the scene. The battalion chief is on the scene and going to the Charlie side. Now it becomes a side channel. That side channel is used for the battalion chief on the back side of the house to say, hey, everything looks good on the Charlie side, or I need this, I need an engine on the back side, or we have a victim on the Charlie side. That's not gonna cut off any interior operations. Interior operations is the priority on the Fireground channel when you're on the Fireground, when you've arrived on that scene. The IC is kind of that side channel to have communications with other companies. That's important, but it's a priority 2 level of importance. And confusing, because it confused us for a while too, so.
So if the incident commander calls for another alarm, is that on the IC channel?
He would typically communicate with our dispatch on the IC channel. They are listening to all channels. But typically, if you're not communicating with interior companies or operations, it's going to be on the IC channel. All operations are on the fireground channel.
But they don't verbally announce that they're on the IC channel. They just already know that that's where those communications come and go from.
Yeah, once you're on the scene, the only people that are going to be on the IC channel is your 2nd Battalion Chief, your initial one, your fixed command, because he's listening to those 2 radio channels. Your 2nd Battalion Chief on a typical house fire will maybe check in with fixed command on the Alpha side and then go to the Charlie side, and then they'll communicate on the IC channel. The other premise of that is if interior companies are having a situation where they cannot get out because someone's on the fireground channel, they're tying up, they have information, they can click on their radio, and they'll be on that IC channel. Less communication, less traffic on there, but they can click on there and get someone's attention to say, we need something imminently at this location.
Divisions and groups talk on.
So your divisions and group is going to be what is assigned to. So we will typically be on TAC. They'll get additional channels. We have more channels than we know what to do with, which is a good thing and a bad thing, right?
All right.
So we have our TAC channels. Go TAC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go on there. We have EMS channels, RIT channels. So we have that ability to assign multiple divisions or groups a TAC channel. Because if you're going interior, you've been assigned a 2nd division, I can't have everyone, and that building that we showed you, if everyone on that operation was on one channel, you wouldn't know where anyone's at, who they're talking about, what's going on. You would say, Division 2, you are responsible for the 2nd floor. You will have Engine 8, Ladder 8, Engine 1 assigned to you on Battalion 1, TAC 2. So when they communicate, so now it goes to another aspect, and we'll get a little bit further into it. So interiorly, they're on TAC 2 communicating with each other. Engine 1, if I give an example, Engine 1 and Engine 2 can talk to each other, if not face-to-face, but on that TAC channel. But when that supervisor of the division, who is leading that division, they want to talk to the fixed command, the incident commander, they talk to him on IC channel.
Okay.
So it's a breakdown of level of everywhere you're at. Everyone's going to be given a radio channel. Every division or group potentially is given a radio channel, depending on how large the event is. What you want to do is get ahead of it as opposed to playing catch up and telling people interiorly, you got to change radio channels because it's going to cause confusion.
Sure, I understand correctly. The incident commander has access to the fireground and the IC channel, but depending on the directives they give or the instructions they give, that will help the divisions and groups understand what other channels they're on.
Yeah, so
Is that
let's,
right?
so on this one, if we had that fire again, let's say it was on the 3rd floor, we could say Engine 1, Engine 2, Ladder 2, you're assigned to Division 3, which is the 3rd floor, for a fire attack. And you will have Engine 1's lieutenant, could be the supervisor of that division, having Engine 1, Engine 2, and Ladder 1. And then from there, they will be assigned to Battalion 1, TAC 3.
That's the channel?
That's a radio channel, I'm sorry.
Got it, okay.
So you have your main channel and you have sub-channels into there. So it's Battalion 1, TAC 3.
And when they say Battalion 1, TAC 3, everyone knows that by TAC 3, they mean that it's the channel.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So they're not saying channel X, Y, and Z. They're giving those acronyms, and everyone on scene knows that that's their channel assignment too.
Correct. You
Okay.
simply say Engine 1, Engine 2, Ladder 1, your Division 3, you'll be on TAC 3 or Battalion 1, TAC 3. And they,
Does the incident commander then have access to those channels as well, just in case they need to hear what's going on?
so that division will have someone who's a supervisor of it. That supervisor will have 2 radio channels like the incident commander does. So that supervisor will be the assigned channel, which is Battalion 1 TAC 3, to communicate with those companies assigned to that division. But when that supervisor needs to speak with the incident commander on the scene, or to give like a CAN report or an update, they will be on the IC channel. So that's your command channel, if you want to say, as they go around and you break it down, because everyone can't be on that same one. So basically, when you look at it, the span of control is the incident commander only has 4 people per se, depending on the incident, reporting to him or her on the IC channel, as opposed to you might have 30 companies on the scene. You don't want 30 companies reporting to you on the same channel.
So it's like those other channels kind of feed in by via supervisor into the other, you're reporting into the IC channel.
Yeah, almost going back to the tasks and tactics, those TAC channels are your, I'll say like tasks, right? There's a lot of tasks going on. There's a lot of TAC channels, and then they feed into that IC channel, which is your strategy channel. So within the same thing, here's our Mayday. This was one of the last Maydays that we had in early 2019. In this picture, you'll see the 2 firefighters coming off that roof there. The lieutenant called a Mayday due to circumstances where he felt the conditions were getting worse, and it was a basement fire, and they were having trouble getting to the basement fire. So he proactively called a Mayday and got the firefighters out without any trouble at all. So the Mayday, and this might be probably more nationwide, you might see this. So the Mayday talk group, when you do this, is going back into it. Our main operational channel is our fireground channel. The IC is communicating to any other channels we need to, or it's a second priority level of communication. If someone gives out a Mayday, a firefighter comes and says, Mayday, 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 this is Firefighter Smith on engine 3, he will stay on that Battalion 1 fireground channel. We do not want the person that's in danger, has a lot of things to be worried about, to have to fumble around and find a radio. He might not be able to have access to a radio, to change a radio channel. The last thing we want him to do or her is to worry about what radio channel that are on. So if they are on Battalion 1 fireground, that is now our RIT channel. The incident commander would assign that as the, going back a little bit, we talked about kind of that golden rule, the engine 3, ladder 3s always are RIT companies. Well, your officer on the ladder typically will be your RIT group supervisor. He will be operating on the Battalion 1 fireground channel, so he can communicate with that trouble firefighter, that Mayday firefighter inside, and he can be on the outside communicating with each other. What they don't want to have is outside traffic that cuts off what that Mayday firefighter needs or what they're trying to get information from them. So that's called a stay channel. The supervisor of the RIT group will stay on that Battalion 1 fireground. The Mayday firefighter will stay on that fireground. Everyone else will go to a TAC 1 channel, or a designated channel as they see. Typically it's going to be a TAC 1, an open and an available channel going into there. Again, the RIT group supervisor is going to communicate with incident command on an IC channel.
How does that message get to
The additional fireground companies that now they need to move on?
So we have,
State channel, what's now designated the state channel?
we have multiple ways. One would be the responsibility of the incident commander to notify everyone that we do have a Mayday, and all operations will go to TAC 1.
So it falls on IC.
Falls on IC, the alarm office will announce that there's a Mayday, and then we also have a tone, or it's like a beep that comes out every 5 seconds, just to alert people. So when I'm on Battalion 1 fireground, and I hear this beep, and it's a real subtle beep, but you'll hear it, and you hear that, you know that there's been a Mayday event, and I need to keep my communication off that channel and I go to a different channel, because someone else needs that channel as a priority more than I do at that time. So just another way to alert people. Then from there, we just get into getting off tactics and going into counseling, just to familiarize yourself with the forms and what is out there. There's PI 17 and a PI 13. The PI 17 is basically your first level of, I want to say discipline, but counseling. This is just, I've observed this event. It's not going to be disciplined, but I'm gonna note this, and this is a way to notate it formally to say, you violated this, or I have a concern, or I've seen your pattern of work history or work performance has been this. This is called an MOC, a PI 17, to sit down with that firefighter, that individual, and discuss what you observed, work performance, whatever it might be. And this will be documented and sent out through to Shane and put in their file.
Who initiates the PI 17? It says supervisor, but at one point you said the captain of the station is responsible for.
Basically, he's responsible for the officers. So it's kind of a mix. Administratively, within the facilities, the inner workings of that firehouse, that captain could issue an MOC to that lieutenant.
Oh, okay.
Now, if it's more fireground, work performance, that battalion chief in charge of that unit day of Battalion 1 in charge of Station 2 could give it to the Ladder 2 officer.
Okay. So the lieutenant or captain would be giving one, could be giving one of these to one of their firefighters.
They're direct firefighters. Yeah, the captain would not obviously skip command and go to a firefighter on a different unit day.
But if that firefighter is assigned on that captain's company for that unit, then, okay. got it.
Correct, because he's his direct supervisor.
Yeah, got
So
it.
your direct supervisor will be the one that initiates it.
Okay, thank you.
And your next one is your PI 13, which is your notice of discipline. This is the initial stage of what could be progressive discipline, your first level stage of discipline. The way this goes is company officers, and really the only person that gives out discipline could be the administrative bureau chief or the fire chief. So if I were a lieutenant and I'm going to advise a firefighter, I want to give him discipline because he violated city work rule, whatever it might be, you just fill it out, you notate what happened, the incident, and you send that, and you inform that firefighter, I'm sending this PI 13 up the chain of command, notifying you on this day. They will do an investigation if need be, but they look into the information and then it comes back down with the discipline. So kind of unique where it's not the company officer that gives out discipline. They are just advising the chain of command of what the incident occurred, how it occurred. The administrative bureau / fire chief can come down with what that discipline will be. The progressive one would be a verbal warning, written reprimand, suspension, termination, or other, depending on what it is. Yes?
So the PI 17 could be initiated by any officer in reference to someone who directly reports to them. Whereas the PI 13 can only be, I guess, it's always going to be sent up to whom?
Our administrative bureau. So they are in charge of our administrative investigations unit, AIU. So but kind of what the old term would be professional standards. They review all incidents that would be for discipline.
Who's the final kind of person that signs off on a PI 13?
That would typically is going to be your administrative bureau chief. Now he might give a recommendation to the fire chief. So no one within a division of fire can terminate a firefighter, an employee. That goes to the director status. So that, depending on the incident, that paperwork could go to the director could check termination, and then it comes back down to that personnel. But a company officer can initiate a PI 13. The direct supervisor of anyone can initiate a PI 13 or 17. It's just that direct supervisor, unless you're the administrative bureau chief, cannot give out the discipline. You're advising this event occurred, I'm notifying up the chain of command until it gets to the correct person. They do the investigation and they say, yeah, you violated this will be your discipline, and it comes back down to the chain to that firefighter or personnel that would be disciplined.
What is the supervisor looking for when choosing between a PI 17 and a PI 13?
I guess would be what the violation was. Was it a direct violation of city work rule? You're not quite violating it, but you're real close. It's that gray area. I don't want to see a pattern, so I'm advising you of this, because if you don't document something, it's very difficult to discipline someone because there's not always, the first step is not always going to be termination. The first step's going to be maybe a written reprimand and then, or verbal, and then written, and just kept going depending on what it is. But somewhere, something needs to be get started. If you don't start and not pass it on to that next officer, then nothing ever gets done. And that's been typically a history within a division, is we don't initiate that MOC, that PI 17. So that's to say, hey, I've seen this, I've observed it, this is how you can correct it. If you don't correct it, it could lead to discipline.
That's out of their own judgment.
Yes, own judgment based on that violation. Now, they could send up a PI 13 to the Administration Bureau, and they maybe potentially come back and say, no, there's no discipline needed. Maybe it just turns out to be an MOC. But typically, if you're going to send this up as a PI 13, you've noticed something that is obviously violating systems manual or city work rules.
This has come up before, and I want to make sure we're clear. People will use MOC interchangeably with PI 17, but a PI 17 and a PI 13 are different.
Yes.
Yeah.
One's counseling and one is discipline.
Does a PI 17 have to occur before a PI 13?
No.
Okay.
No. Obviously, you made a gross judgment call. You could obviously go right to a PI 13.
Does the PI 17 go away after a period of time, or is it a permanent fixture?
Both are permanent within your records.
10 years apart, would still be a step in progressive discipline.
I think you get into the union battle at that point.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Any other questions? That is all I have for this. So if you have any other questions or want to backtrack a little bit, I'd be happy to address anything as we go through here.
So I had a couple questions.
Yes.
So one is dealing with high rises. So when is a building considered a high rise?
So we go into operational and the textbook of prevention. When it's 75 feet or above the lowest grade, that's per prevention's definition, the building code definition. Operationally, you don't know what that 75 feet is, and you're going out there measuring it. So basically it is anything out of reach of our ladder apparatus. So if you can't get to the floor, to the top floor with your platform or turtle ladder, basically it's a high rise. And you really get into, even at that, multi-story versus high rise, that's kind of where that definition operationally will come from.
Chief, what about auto aid, mutual aid? Do you have those?
We do have automatic aid, yes.
With obviously surrounding jurisdictions. Is there any change in your operation when you're dealing with your auto aid, or do you guys just kind of interchanged? So if one of those engines and one of those ladders is an auto aid, it just integrates right into the book.
They do. I think two specific ones would be talking about rescues and auto accidents being a Columbus fire rescue, depending on what that incident, and it spells that out in the SOPs to say, if this incident is upgraded, at least one Columbus rescue needs to be assigned to that incident. The other one would be if a working incident occurs within the city of Columbus, a mutual automatic aid battalion chief arrives before, or they take command before anyone else. It'd be a matter of what level is there and what level arrives to say that basically Columbus has to take a fixed command upon arrival.
And then that would be a transfer of command?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's spelled out in the SOPs exactly based on, we can get into it a little bit and we'll pull it up if we want, but it spells it out pretty clearly in there. Yeah.
Yes? If you get dispatched to a scene it's not a fire, it's some other Do you always do some kind of a, I don't want to say rundown, but a report once you get there, or is there differences in that?
There always is command taken, and there's always some type of information provided, whether it's a natural gas, auto accidents, we have to give rundowns for. It could be a vehicle fire, just be confirming, yes, we have a vehicle fire, there's no exposures, and you can contain this, meaning this engine company on the scene is all that we need for this, so situation can contained.
So are there any tactics that an incident commander would have to approve before they're used? I guess the one example I always think of is breaking out windows in a high rise.
I wouldn't. No, I would say within the SOPs, I mean, I guess you get into a judgment call, and, you know, the other one would be, you know, if it's a hazmat incident, you have a much more time on your side versus critical incident time. And decision needs to be made at that point. So no, I wouldn't say there's anything definitively that has to be approved by that fire chief or by the incident commander.
Chief, maybe this is outside the scope a little bit, but within the Division of Fire, what are a couple things that you guys do really well, and what are a couple things that you guys go, man, we're still working on that, or that's just not working like we thought it would?
Operationally, administratively,
it can go anywhere.
Gosh, I mean, I love to say we do great things in training because I'm in the training bureau, but I mean, I honestly do believe that, and we continue to get better with that, but we take that to heart. I think we do a great job of getting fast water to the fire, and by the means of that is we take those pre-connected lines and we advance and make an interior attack as soon as we get down the scene. And that's our goal is, as soon as you put the fire out, things will get better. So that's what we want to do, is we want to make an interior attack with fast water to put that fire out. What we don't do good at? That's a difficult question, put me on the spot.
That you'd say, you know, we could do better at that. Not that you don't, or that you're doing poorly.
Yeah.
But where's that improvement that you could see?
Or even maybe some things that are contested, very hotly contested,
Yeah.
then maybe it's a different way to frame it.
Yeah, I think operationally, command always comes up because it's always in your line of duty desk. But I think operationally, we could always work in incident command. I think we've come a long way in the last 4 or 5 years. But I think the battalion chief level in incident command has done very well. But as you go down, we've poorly trained and educated the captains, lieutenants, and firefighters in that incident command level and the expectations.
Were you done asking your questions?
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you. From the perspective of a battalion chief or deputy chief, what are some maybe controversies or recurring issues with these PI 17s and PI 13s? Like anything that comes up in terms of them being issued, or how they're issued, or why they're issued? Anything that a battalion chief or deputy chief would be responsible for?
It could be a lack of being issued, I think would be a key thing. That company officer that, you know, as Sherry talked about, they live in that environment, they live with those other personnel. It's difficult to be the company boss versus a friend. And sometimes those aren't always issued. And making sure that the battalion chief ensures that they are, if there is something. But that would not, to have that lieutenant or captain, if it is a firefighter, to initiate that paperwork.
Is that something a battalion chief or deputy chief would be expected to address in the event that those aren't being issued when they need to be issued? What role do each of them play in ensuring that occurs?
So it kind of goes back to, if you don't start paperwork or documentation, my hands are tied. So as a battalion chief, a lieutenant or captain comes up and they're complaining about this firefighter, and they're like, it's the same thing every day, and they're violations of things. They're not doing things right, poor performance. Well, I'm sure the chiefs in the room will say, what did you do to help them out? What did you do discipline? Did you notify them at any time? Well, I didn't do anything. Well, what do you want me to do at that point? Because there's been a lack of a paper trail to go back to square one to start off with. So if you don't initiate that as a company officer, the battalion chief's going to say, you need to begin initiating that if you want me to do anything or administrative to do anything.
Can those officers be issued a PI 17 for not issuing PI 17 or for not initiating PI 17s?
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially if it was a large incident, but it was based on, violating a city work rule, and I'm sure we can think about incidents in recent years that have occurred to say if no one addressed that, then yeah, they could be easily.
I'm wondering about, since we're on the discipline topic, when the union would get involved, or would it be up to the person that got in trouble to say, oh, I want to talk to my union before you give me discipline, or something
So,
like that?
yeah, and I probably should have pointed that out. When you receive a PI 13, there must be a union representative must be offered. They can refuse that representative, but that must be offered. The 13. And that's typically be one that comes back down with discipline. Because when it's going up, you're basically stating this happened. They'll have time to refute that if they need to based on the investigation, to sit down during that disciplinary hearing, which it would typically go to.
So there'll be a hearing then that occurs when that document is completed to give back to the offender, the firefighter. And that's the point where the union rep, okay, we're going to meet, you can have a union rep. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And some guys will offer when they initially do that, but it's kind of a moot point, I see it as, because you're not actually disciplining them at that time. It's just notifying, I'm setting this up to chain of command. They're not signing anything at that point. The only signature is the supervisor that initiated that paperwork signs it, and he's putting his name to that information that is on there. It goes up, it comes back down with the discipline, and at that time, the firefighter or personnel is going to sign that stating that they agree to this discipline. You can't argue against, in the union side, you can't argue against something that hasn't occurred. Right? If you haven't been disciplined something, then I can't argue against it. That initial paperwork is not discipline. It's initiating the process, but it's not formally disciplined at that time.
Who sits in the disciplinary process or hearing?
So typically, most cases would be administrative bureau chief, the person, and then the union representative.
There wouldn't be any engagement of the battalion chief or deputy chief or anything like that.
So, and again, it's differently. We can go to auto accidents, and auto accidents typically come back in the PI 13 because they violated some type of traffic rule or city division SOP. When that comes down, they basically, because there's so many of them, they do a monthly meeting. They look at them, and there's a board that looks at it. They discipline it, and it comes back down to the firefighter. And they say, hey, you've been, I forget the exact wording of it, but basically guilty of violation of this, this, and this, and you can sign it at that time. You can be offered union representation, but typically people go, okay, yeah, I hit that car. There's nothing I can do or say about it. That's kind of a unique thing where there's not actually a formalized hearing. Now, you can argue against it and ask for that, but you have to bring additional information if you want to basically get that hearing.
But because there's discipline involved, it goes through that process.
Yes.
And it may be time off or whatever they're common.
Sure.
For the traffic accident. Okay.
Strikes and X happens sort of scenario where you and I understand the distinction between a notice of discipline and actual discipline. So in the event that a notice of discipline is now turned into discipline X number of times, could that lead to some other level of something? Is there a set standard for that?
I think that's up to discretion of the administrative bureau chief to look at the past history, if those events are related to each other, how recently they were, what was the last hearing, what the, came out to be. They could be signing a, their last strike, one more time, and there could be a termination. But, if they start off with 48 hours of suspension, you do the same thing, then the anticipation would be it would increase, and progressive discipline would increase up to and including termination at some point. But again, that's a director level for termination.
Judged on a case-by-case scenario in a certain sense, those factors?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be hard to say it's definitive, black and white. It's got to be take into account what the violation was, what the series or pattern was, if there was.
So when the company officer, whoever initiates that disciplinary form, when they fill it out, do they recommend what they think the discipline should be, or do they just leave that blank and then the battalion chief fills in what it will be?
The PI 13, they will fill out the information. So they fill out the explanation, the remarks, suggested corrective action, and then previously disciplined that they go into there. But this is actually, the nature of discipline or warning is checked by the administrative chief that is basically in charge of the hearing, in charge of the discipline. They will send that back down there with the discipline.
And then correct me if I'm wrong, but the PI 17 and 13, I mean, certainly there are, if there's something on a fire scene that didn't go quite right, we can talk about it when we get back to the firehouse. And it's just the daily workings at the firehouse don't go quite right, we can talk about that. But outside of those things, this is basically the long and the short of all discipline, because there are no annual
Performance reviews.
performance reviews, right?
No, there are not performance reviews.
So, given what Sherry said, so an officer can make a decision. Am I just going to kind of do an informal one-on-one address, something I observed? I don't always have to take it. I don't always have to articulate it through a PI 17 or initiate a PI 17. They can address it. It's legitimate. They can address it without initiating a PI 17.
Yeah, they could address it as any formal paperwork, and just, they can, you almost want to have something to go back on as maybe a reference point to say, I've seen this, but I feel like, they have outside things going on, they're having trouble at home or this and that. This is unique to them, but I want to address it, make sure they understand what my expectations are. But the next time I see it, it's like, okay, I'm starting to see a pattern. I need to start documenting this pattern, because if we don't, we fall into, this pattern turns into a big event and there's no documentation to it. And anyone above is going to go, well, why didn't anyone notify me of this, or why wasn't this documented before? And that's why we get into trouble, because there's no initiation of that.
So the fundamental expectation is that it's documented somehow, and if they opt to not initiate a PI 17, at least provide some sort of explanation of why they didn't. But in all cases, try to document, or not all cases, but.
And with
That's a personal recommendation versus what the systems manual or division's expectations are. So division, you do not have to document it. You can give someone 100 MOCs if you want to, but to document things and show what their pattern has been. But at some point, that should turn into API 13 for discipline.
Can you talk about a smooth log and a rough log?
Oh, for what, sure.
A smooth log and a rough log?
The smooth log is a formalized daily report at the fire station of what events occurred, who visited the firehouse, when your runs were, if you had something going on. The rough log is just kind of a draft of what was occurred until that is formalized going into that. You're not going to put your discipline on there, on your smooth log as your formalized one, because obviously anyone can open that up in the station house and look at that and say, hey, so-and-so got a PI 13, what was that about? No, you're not going to advertise that information, and you shouldn't advertise that information. So that's just basically your daily occurrence of what happened today at that firehouse. So the captain could look back and say, hey, why didn't you do any house chores that day, or why didn't you clean for annual house inspection? Well, no, we documented right here, we completed at that time. Oh, okay. So it's a reference point to look back and see what occurred the last few days while you're off as well. Anything else?
I'm just trying to think, are there some things, this might be a gray area, but that you might know some things just off the top of your head that you need to report up the chain of command or required to, or some things that are just a judgment call versus something that's more like, oh, I should tell my design chief about this?
Yeah, you can have that per se informal conversation with them and just say, hey, what should I do with this? And they might say, yeah, we need to report that. Or, okay, just let me know if something changes, or observe and watch this and see that. Kind of goes back to personal judgment as far as journaling, but per the division, there's no expectation that you write something down. Again, a gray area, because they could easily come back and say, anytime you have a concern like that, a PI 17 more than likely should be given as a memorandum of counseling. It's not discipline, it's just, I've noticed this, I've observed this. And really the benefit is you're benefiting yourself for that documentation, and you're benefiting that firefighter, because now they have an expectation of what you have of them or what the division has of them. If you don't give them to them and they keep on going down the wrong path, well, why would they know any different if you don't alert them to that?
Is it pretty typical for someone as, by the time they reach their first officer rank to have one or two of those, or what's kind of the norm?
It's hit or miss. As a relief officer, myself as a lieutenant for 2-3 years, I didn't really have many of those things. And I could look back and say, well, maybe I should have done that at that point, but overwhelmingly, I would say no. But you can talk to other officers and they say, yeah, I went to this station and I run every single day. So dependent on where you're at, where your problems are at, you could be doing it, that daily. It might be an exaggeration, but frequently versus not at all, because you're going to stations that have good firefighters or personnel you work with, and you don't have to worry about that.
Do they communicate their stats to each other? I've got X number of...
Sometimes it amazes me when I said, I've done it, in the last 6 months, I've done it like 10 times. I'm thinking, wow. I didn't do really any until I was captain of recruit training, and that's a frequent event there. But that's why I learned when you give people expectations, they can get better, or at least a discipline, and you can document that.
Where did the 17s, lack of a better term, live? Are they maintained by the officer who issued, by the battalion?
Yeah, it'll say at the bottom there, you can't really read it. Basically, one goes to personnel records, supervisor, and the employee, and they typically will ask that you send one to the local as well.
So they can follow them through to a different battalion. You have a problem child that ends up going to another battalion.
Yes.
Their history can't follow them.
Yeah, that's another off-subject thing to talk about. As I think that's throughout the fire service or the human resource world. Did you have another question, Chief? All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. Hopefully cleared up some questions for you. But please, as you go throughout this week, if you have something you need to elaborate on or get some more information, I'm available, and Sherry and Jeremy know how to get a hold of me, and I will get back to you, because I know time is critical for you guys and girls to be here this week to get these things completed, or in the weeks to come. So what I provide to you only benefits me in the long run too. So thank you very much for your time today.